So welcome to this video on weather. In this video we're going to talk through a few weather concepts, but we're really going to focus on the practical side of things, on how to look up weather and how to make some decisions based on the information that we get. And we're going to use a flight to this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and we're looking to fly from Leeds Bradford up to Teesside Airport. So there's a few different sources of weather. In fact, there's lots and lots of sources of weather available online. Some are definitely better than others. So I'm going to talk through the sources that you absolutely do need to have access to and understand, and then suggest a couple that will help you to get some additional information. So the first one that you'll need to download if you've not done already, or get an account for, should I say, is the Met Office website. You just Google Met Office Aviation Briefing, it'll take you to this page. So this is the our official source of weather, and when you come to your meteorological exam, you'll very much be familiar with the information that you get off of this website. This is also the information that you're expected to present to the examiner on your PPL skills test, and be expected to demonstrate to the examiner that you understand it. So really, really key to get onto this early and practice looking this up and understanding it early. So let's have a look at what we can download. So there's a few different pieces of information we can download. So the first one I tend to download is this one. So this is kind of the synoptic chart, and in a snapshot this gives me quite a lot of information about what's going on both now and what's going to be happening in the future. So we can see this is 12 o'clock today, and so just before I fly. So I can see we've got this low pressure system out to the west, with a number of fronts coming through, and then we've got this high pressure system out over to the east, and we're kind of sat in the middle of the two. And there's a few things I'm looking at on this to kind of determine what the weather's likely to do. So we know that the wind rotates around the low in an anti-clockwise direction and clockwise around a high. So I know that wind's going to be a northerly wind, and I can see the isobars are quite tight. So I know it's going to be a fairly strong northerly wind. You can see, as we've seen, these occluded front coming through here, and the weather that's associated with that. And the weather's often in an occluded front, maybe 60 miles, 100 kilometres in front of that. So we know we're going to have some associated weather with that, with a trough behind that, which is kind of probably just going to miss us, I suspect. So yeah, we can tell quite a bit about what's going on, and actually what's going to be going on over the next day or two, because this is what's kind of working its way in over the next few days. So we can gain a lot from this chart. And then let's take a look at the next form. So this is called the Form 215. We can see that labelled down here, and this gives us an overview of in a snapshot in time. So we can see, if we start reading it, it's the forecast below 10,000 feet. It was corrected at some point, so you may have so make sure we've got the right version of that, and it's valid on the 20th of January between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and the fronts are depicted at 12 o'clock midday. We look in the bottom left corner. You can see we've got a legend which explains what some of the symbols mean, and we'll refer back to these in a moment. So we can see that we are in Sector B here, and we're looking to fly up to Teesside, which kind of borders B and D. So I'm going to be particularly interested with that, but actually the weather's moving in this direction, so we need to think about this Sector A as well, because ultimately by the time we fly this afternoon, some of this will have worked its way through. So let's have a look at what's happening in B. So I'm not going to read this line by line. What I would say is, the first time you look at this, you probably look at it and go, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I'm never going to be able to understand that. But actually, with a bit of practice, you can soon decode these. And what I would do is initially have a go at decoding them, and then any that you're unsure of, there's a number of kind of resources online called TAF Decoder. So if you go to one of them, then they'll help you with some of the challenging ones. And with practice, you'll be able to decode these really, really quite quickly. And what I would do in the early days, just look at this every day, whether you're flying or not, and have a go at working your way through it and seeing if you can decode it. And any unusual symbols that don't appear very often, you can obviously look those up. So let's just have a look at B. So it says initially within 30 kilometers, there's no significant weather, and then isolated occasionally in B1. So if we look in B1, that's kind of this bottom corner down here. So that's not going to affect us too much. But it says 7 kilometers showers of rain on the sea and along the coast. And then we've got isolated 3,000 meters plus showers of rain. So that means heavy showers of rain plus thunderstorms and rain. So we've got ice within that, potentially within the rain in B1 again. And then isolated 3,000 meters in mist over the land until 12 o'clock Z, and then isolated fog until 11 o'clock Z, so that's early doors. And then we've got some mountain wave with a maximum vertical speed of 600 feet per minute at 6,000 feet, and then occasional, if we look down here, that little symbol means moderate turbulence, so that's south of 57 north. So 57 north's up here somewhere, and isolated hill fog. So we can hear, we can see we've got lots of potential weather going on associated, and that's really associated with that frontal system that's coming through. If we look at the cloud next, we can see in B again, we've got few scattered, occasional broken Q and strata Q clouds. And then again, if we look at these symbols down here, we've got some moderate icing and moderate turbulence between 1,500 feet and 2,500 feet, and 5,000 feet and 7,000 feet. So in terms of altitudes, we're just going to stick 2 noughts on every time there's a number. And then as we work our way down even further, we can see, we've got some CBs, and the cloud base is coming back down again to 0 in the fog. So quite a lot going on there as well. And then once again, that's going to be associated with that front. And then the last column is the 0 degree isotherm. And we can see that that's, again, stick 2 noughts on the end from 3,000 feet to 4,500 feet in the north and 4,500 to 6,000 in the south. So I've kind of a bit of a whistle stop tour through that, but take some time having a read of that code and having a go at decoding it. And as I say, build up a picture for the whole of the day, for the different areas of the day. And then the other thing we can do with this form is they produce it for various time frames. So this is now at 1800, so 6 o'clock. So that's 6 hours later. And if we flick back between the two, can you see how that front has moved across? And you can see it's moving across at kind of 15, 20 knots. And again, we're now in this sector here of... now in sector C and then B up here, is kind of that middle band there. And kind of my flight this afternoon is into that period there. So I'll be looking at the 2 different periods to try and make some decisions about what the weather's going to do. So next, let's have a look at the form 214. And if we look at the top again, it explains the period. So this is 20th of January between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock this evening, and we were expecting that southerly wind based on what we looked at before. And if we look at a box, you can see it's broken them down into different regions. So let's look at this box here. We can see on the left hand side we've got altitude, so 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 5,000 feet. We've got the wind, so we've got kind of a southeasterly wind there, swinging a bit further round to the south as we get higher. So we've got 140 at 35 at 1,000 feet. And then this next number there is the temperature. And unless there's an inversion, we would expect that to decrease with altitude. So I'll be looking at the region that we're flying in. So if we're going up to Teesside, I'll be looking kind of around these 4 here. So having looked at the forms 215 and 214, my initial interpretations are that it's not a great flying day, is it? So we've got a strong southerly wind, which is less of an issue for us at Leeds Bradford because we have a fairly north-south runway. But if we go up to Teesside, it's pretty much between the two runways. So we're going to have a strong crosswind. And if we think about what the wind's going to do on the surface, we know in the northern hemisphere, from 1,000 feet down to the surface, the wind's going to back off and it's going to reduce as it comes down. So it's going to come round to a more southeasterly direction and probably decrease to somewhere in the region of probably about 20 knots, something like that. And then we know from the 215, we're going to have these frontal systems coming through and bringing with that some pretty poor weather. So we might have some nice weather in between the gaps, but actually for periods of the day, it's not going to be a great VFR flying day. And the next website I wanted to show you, which is kind of a kind of supplementary information now. These are really commonly used. You get it as an app on your phone, or this is a screenshot from the website called Windy. As I say, it's really commonly used in aviation, and it's got loads and loads of information on. So when you open it up, you've got all these overlays that you can put on, and you can change the time frame that you're looking at. So just spend a bit of time playing with it. If you set up an account, it said you can pay for a premium version. I only use the free version of it, which gives me everything I need. And you can set up your favorites. So this is the weather radar, and we can see that this was taken about 12:30, and we can see that weather coming in from the west linked to those fronts, and you can slide that forward through time to see what that's looking like. We can put the wind overlay on, and it's quite nicely how it color codes it, so we can see that strong wind around that low there, and we know that that's working its way across, and we got those kind of north-south or southeast-northwest isobars that's causing that strong wind. And I've dropped a pin on there, and you can see that at this that time that this is screenshotted on, we've got that southeasterly wind. Now I was saying I was expecting around 20 knots, something like that, and that's showing us as 15 knots. So that works with that quite nicely. And then, as I say, there's multiple different overlays. This is the precipitation overlay. And again, you can slide this through time. So this is a little bit further forward than we saw on that previous screen. And we can see, look at that, that heavy rain now hitting that southwest corner of the UK and Wales and then working its way across. And then the last one that I tend to use regularly is this one, which is the cloud overlay. And we can see it color codes it from the purples and reds, which are very low cloud, and then up until blues, and then through into to greens. So we can see again we've got this low level cloud sat over Wales now, and as I say, everything's working in the direction of where we're going to be flying. So this once again just reinforces that the weather's not a great flying day for us. And then the other thing we need to be able to look up is TAFs and METARs. So our forecasts and then the actual weather at the time that it was published. So we can see this is I tend to use AeroWeather, again a real commonly used app. There's a few different ones out there. So again, download them. Most of them have got free options, and have a play with which one works best for you. So we can have the raw version of it, which is this one. And as I'd said before, get used to looking at these raw this raw data and have a practice at decoding it. But what you can do quite nicely on this app is look at the raw and then click decoded, and it'll decode it for you. So just get used to doing this regularly. Again, get up in the morning, whether you're flying or not, look at what the weather's going on, have a go at decoding it, and then click on the decoded button and see if you got it right. And we can see at the top of the screen there's also some useful information around sunrise and sunset, and it also publishes some important relevant information around the airfield. And we can see as we scan our way through down, so this was taken at 12:20. We've got that wind coming from 130 at 14 knots. We've got good visibility actually, but we've got scattered cloud at 1,000 feet and broken cloud at 3.5. And as we work our way through the day, you can see everything that we're expecting. So again, I'm not going to read through it line by line, but the wind's increasing. the clouds coming down, and we're getting rain and drizzle, and then the cloud at the real back end of the day coming all the way down to 400 feet. And then I've clicked decoded, and I'm just using that to double check that what I thought I'd seen in the raw, I've decoded incorrectly. So with practice, you won't need to use this, but definitely in the early days, have a play with flicking between the two. So I pay for the premium version of it, which is just a few pounds a month. And it has a few added extras. The main one that I particularly like is this one. So it depicts the runway of the airfield, and it tells you your headwind and your crosswind, which is a really obviously a useful tool and saves you having to work that out. So I would obviously look this up for Leeds and look this up for my destination and alternate. I'm not going to go through those in this video in the interest of time, but Teesside is looking very similar. And then the last resource I'm going to show you is this one. It's called a grommet. So there's a few different websites that produce them. I use a website called Autorouter, which is another free website. There's the web address up there. You can just Google Autorouter grommet and it'll take you to this page. Again, set up a free account, and essentially fairly straightforward. You type in where your route. So I'm going from Leeds to Teesside. I can put in my waypoints along the route if I'm not going in a straight line. I'm going to go at 5,000 feet at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to cruise at 85 knots. And you can have a bit of a play with the settings there to show you how it displays on the page. I tend to just leave it as 999. Click that I'm not a robot, and then it'll download you one of these, a grommet, which I think is a really nice cross-section depiction of what's going on in the time scale that we're flying. So I'm saying I'm looking to take off at 2 o'clock, and you can see it pops a line on of the route that we're the altitude we're looking to fly at, or my ideal altitude, and then it depicts the cloud, so we can see really solid cloud, low level all the way up. We can see we've got some big forming towering cumuluses in here. It tells us that the 0 degree isotherm is at 5,000 feet, and it gives us our wind, so we can see that wind from the southwest, or south-southeast at that level, and then swinging around as it goes up, and then our temperatures at different levels. So it's really, I guess, designed initially for IFR flying. So it does, this scale is quite big, going all the way up to 60,000 feet, which isn't particularly relevant for us in our SCP aircraft. But that said, if we just focus on this bottom bit, I think it's really useful, and that again reinforces the fact that this isn't a good day to go flying up to Teesside. The other thing that's quite nice is it puts the terrain on the bottom as well, so you can get a bit of a feel for where the cloud is in terms of terrain. So if I was flying a bigger aircraft and I was IFR capable, then absolutely, I could look to get on top of this, and actually I'd be quite nicely sat in the sunshine, potentially on top of the clouds, and then descend back down on the other side. If I was IFR capable. In terms of the flying that we're going to do for a VFR flight, as I say, this just reinforces that today is not the day to go flying to Teesside. So I hope you found that useful. As I say, we've looked at a few different resources there, and they've all kind of backed each other up with the information, and has given us some really useful tools to make some decisions. And so the decision that I would make based on everything that I've looked at today is that I would be holding off today on that flight up to Teesside as a VFR flight. But what I could do is use some of these tools to look into the future and determine whether tomorrow might be a better day, or later on in the week. Windy in particular does a good job of looking forward into the future over a few days, as does this grommet website. So as ever with this, if you've got any questions about it, anything that you're unsure about, please get in touch. Have a play with these tools and just use them regularly. The more you use them, the more you're going to be able to do this quickly and slickly, and particularly being able to decode those TAFs and METARs. And the quicker you're able to do them, it's really useful in the real world. But actually, when you come to do your MET exam, if you've practiced this lots and lots, you'll find the MET exam a breeze, really, in terms of decoding them.